Well, this isn't just the ferociously focused Olympic only race bike you might be expecting from a performance prioritizing brand like Cervelo, because while undoubtedly it is World Cup fast, it's also have an absolute riot in the woods, enjoyable. This ZFS 5 really is a remarkable result for a first stab at serious full suspension mountain biking.
My name's Guy Kesterman. I've been a professional biking kit tester for over 25 years, and this video is a compilation catch-up on a bike I first rode over 16 months ago, and I've been riding this pre-production prototype of for several months this spring before its official launch, well, today. So, the bike in question is the brand new Cervelo ZFS 5, which comes in 100 and 120mm spec, and also it was a frame set. Now this bike here, as you can see, it's running the new SID 120mm fork, and I've opened up the shock to 45mm stroke, so it's 115mm at the back. So in effect it's a 120mm bike, but the spec is actually closer to their 100mm bike, because that's the one that runs SID Ultimate equipment, but whereas the longer travel bike runs Fox. But let's not get caught up in the spec I'm running. We can go into that later if you're really interested. In fact, hit me up in the comments and I'll talk you through that then. What we really want to do is look at the frame quickly. I'll stick the geometry up in a cheat sheet, pick out the major interesting parts of that geometry as I talk through. We'll talk about what it is, we'll talk about what it isn't, and we'll do some comparisons to other bikes, and then we'll get onto the trail here at Stoneburn and give ourselves a rowdy hot lap to really show how this bike performs. So if you're an internet armchair warrior, when this bike kind of first broke cover at the World Cups earlier this year, pretty much everyone said, oh, it's just a blur, because it's Santa Cruz and Cervelo are part of Pon Industries, Pon Hub, whatever you want to call them. And to be fair, all these suspension hard points, pivots here, the pivot down there, the fact that they're user serviceable collet bearings with a lifetime warranty on them, and their kind of relationship in terms of where they are into the bottom bracket, head tube, shock mount points, and indeed the actual fact it uses 190mm shock. They are all shared with the Blur, which is just to get this bike off to a flying start in terms of the design project, because they needed, to be fair, they initially needed to do it in a hurry to get the bikes under Milan Varda, who just signed up to Team Lotto Jumbo, to Team Jumbo Visma, to race the Olympics on them. But then he unfortunately had an accident, so wiped himself out for a year. So they've had more time to work on, even though the chassis was more or less finalised when I first rode it 16 months ago. They've had a lot of time to work on the specifics of the shock tune in particular. And to be honest, while, there's definitely some similarity in the silhouette, you could say that about pretty much every bike in the cross-country field, unless it's got a vertical shock down there, or unless it's a Scott Spark where everything's hidden away. Pretty much every bike in the current cross-country field, Super Caliber and Epic Evo World Cup withstanding, kind of follows this format, and it's been the kind of go-to since, I think the first time I rode something like this was the Gary Fisher Hi-Fi Pro, when that was first introduced as a 29er XC bike. And certainly if you look at bikes like the Pinarello that's just been launched as well, and even the Decathlon, they all follow this same basic format, because it's just a really good way to package the shock into the frame, still have room for 2 bottle cages, and then you just run a flex stay on the rear to allow that suspension actuation, in this case up to 115mm. But that's where the similarities stop. This is an entirely Cervelo composite layup and tube set collection. So there are definite influences from their other bikes. If you look down at the bottom bracket, Scotty, their designer, told me there's a lot of influence there from the Aspero gravel bike. And then if you look at the mainframe tubes, a lot of the learnings from their R5 superlight climbing bike, which Jonas Vingegaard has been winning Tour de France's on, moved into this bike. So it's a super light front end. Cervelo have quoted 1472 grams without the shock, and that's a 242 gram shock. So that's 1729 if my maths is right. This pre-production bike was a little heavier than that. I can't remember the exact figure. It was definitely nearer 2K than that, but this is a large, and it's more of an engineering sample than a finished layup sample. But it should, you know, it rides as it should, but they've managed to chase even more weight of it outside of that. And going back to that Blur comparison, that's 200 grams lighter than a Blur. And part of the reason for that is because they've gone with headset cable routing and there's no internal trunking. To be honest, it's a bit of a sod to thread all those cables through there. Certainly, I mean, it should have a little rubber grommet through there to keep everything protected, but mine didn't come, the frame didn't come with that, so I had to hand thread it all, and then you've got to put silencer pipe in there to stop it banging around. But that does save what you lose in convenience in terms of servicing and the headset servicing, obviously with that internal headset routing. You gain in the fact that, you know, you haven't had to put holes and reinforcing plates into the frame, and you haven't got any internal tubes in there either. So this is a proper stripped down racer that kind of relies on you having somebody servicing it for you, whether that's your pro mechanic or your local bike shop. And apart from that cable routing, it's all very practical. So you've got those lifetime warranty bearings, like I've always talked about. You've got plenty of space around a 2.4 inch tyre. I mean, this is a 225, but I've had 2.4s in here, no problem. It's a UDH rear hanger, so it's fully T-type transmission compatible. As you can see, I'm running the XXSL setup here. And then if we move round this side, you can see that rear brake actually sits on a replaceable floating brake shoe at the back there, so that allows the whole length of that seat stay to flex symmetrically with the other side. But while the back end's symmetrical, once you get to this seat tube, it's super asymmetrical, comes right over to the offside here. So really, and then you've got that sort of Squoval Cervelo kind of trademark square bottom on it there. And then you've got relatively slim tubes all the way through, but again, that's part of the weight reduction and kind of the carefully curated ride feel of this bike, which we'll go into shortly. And in terms of fixtures, you've got two bottom bolts there, and then you've got 3 on the down tube, so you can shift your bottle up and down depending on where you want your drink. And then coming back up to the head tube, as you can see, I'm just running two pipes into it. That's the front disc brake and the remote lockout for the rear shock, because this is a wireless gear setup. But because you've got another plate on the front there, you can actually run a full cabled rear gear and a dropper post all through that headset, so everything comes in relatively neatly. And I have to say, while it's nothing, you know, groundbreaking in terms of silhouette, it's certainly a very clean and business-like looking bike, and it's covered with the usual lifetime warranty that you get on all Cervelo frames.
Right, so I promised you some potentially surprising numbers, so let's get into 3 of them straight away. Obviously Cervelo, massively successful brand in triathlon, track and road, a huge number of champions and championships won on their bikes, not least Tour de France this time around. But well, the reach is very much kind of compact and contemporary race at 470 in the 469 in the 100mm format, and at 457 in the 120mm that I'm running here. Head angle is an enjoyably beastly 666 degrees, so a lot slacker. Oh, right. Massive sticky eating fail. Come on. I know these reserve wheels have got a lifetime warranty. We don't want that in there. Oh, by the way, I've run this bike with a bunch of different wheels, but I'm on reserves tonight with Recon Race front and rear. Bit greasier than I would normally run in these conditions, but that's kind of a complete bike correct as I had. And they're, you know, they are a really good wheel as well. And the Recon race spec is what they were on a 100mm bike. So, in terms of geometry, this bike is actually, I'm going wide so I don't twat the bar cam. This bike is a lot slacker than the Blur, and actually pretty much identical, save for a differently steeper seat tube, to Specialized Epic Evo, which is where we get to surprise number 2. Because although this is very much a premium bike from a premium brand, so you expect to be paying a premium price, and you know, certainly not cheap at essentially £3,500 for the frame set as I had it supplied. That's actually a full £1,000 cheaper than an S-Works Epic Evo frame set. And as you go right down the different specs on the bike, even complete bikes are cheaper, all the way down to the GX model. And because this bike's just come out, you've obviously got the advantage that you're getting all the latest SRAM kit, or Specialized at the moment, still on non-T-type and older SIDs on a lot of their builds. So, while it's on par with, you know, bikes like the Blur and other premium cross-country setups, and obviously bikes like the Canyon Lux Trail, Direct Cell are a lot cheaper in terms of spec. It's a bargain compared to the closest one to it on geometry and probably overall ride feel, because as you know, that if you watched that Lux Trail video, that was not a bike that won my heart by any stretch, whereas this has been something of a love affair since I first rode the engineering prototype in Firenze, like I say, full 16 months ago. I've basically been badgering, oh god, it feels good through there, more on that in a minute, badgering Cervelo to let me have a bike long term. So I was delighted when they sorted me out with this pre-production sample, not least because, you know, in terms of flex, actually having those, you know, 0027, 0026 frame stickers on there to tell people it's not production, and they'll go, oh, I can't tell you what it is yet. You know, it's obviously a big old bunch of show-off points. And also, it just rides really beautifully. So, yes, it's got a relatively slack head angle, so it's not nervy in the steeps or at speed when tyres start to let go, because you're running a semi-slick race tyre on greasy rock and damp loam. But because it is relatively compact, it's still got a real agility. And even in this more trail format, whoa, what was I saying about tyres? It's truth. I was not expecting it to let go, but there. But to be honest, that shows just how composed this bike has been all the way down, because I didn't get any sense of impending doom like that on the way down. And it's certainly more settled with this latest SID pairing on it. There's a whole separate video on how they've made those more supple, but also stiffer, lighter, and better able to cope with the big hits. And they've also done some detailed layup changes since I rode that first prototype bike. So from the feel of it, even though it's got lighter, it's also got a little bit stiffer, because that felt better balanced with 100mm, whereas when I was running this with 100mm, definitely felt like it was the SID SL fork that was holding it back on descents. And I've already said it weighs 10.9 kilos like this, but in that lighter spec with even lighter wheels, it's and a rigid post, because that's what all the 100mm bikes do come with. It's pretty close to 10 kilos. I think Cervelo say the Lambada is racing on a 10.4 kilo bike. Oh, bikes like this are just so much better than an e-bike. Sorry, but they are. And because it's not stretched out, you don't struggle as much to get it round tight corners as you would if it was a long reach and a slack head angle. And you can build a super light frame without it losing any sense of torsional rigidity or prediction when things start bully you around. And also just a lovely ride feel to this bike now. Certainly stiff enough to make full use of this bigger fork. And when I've had chunkier tyres in, been running it with a forecaster for a lot of the testing, just because the weather's been so grim, it's felt super planted and sure-footed with that on. It's still got that little kind of swerve and dodge compliance that can make all the difference, kind of swimming through a jagged section where a stiffer bike might get knocked or sliced offline. This is a really easy bike to ride, not just in terms of the fact that acceleration with every pedal stroke and altitude gain are so easy with that low weight, but also because it's structurally forgiving, and from a suspension point of view, even when you do a lousy line like that, the traction, bound to happen at one point, the traction is superb. Can't get your feet in, guys. And what's interesting, although I have got, come on, get your foot in. There you go. The triple mode RockShox suspension on here now, with that extra pedal function, that proven blur kinematic with a bit of Cervelo seat stay magic on top, and a floating brake link asymmetry means it actually pedals super well, even in fully open. And then when you do switch it to pedal, it's just got more purpose, more propulsive platform. So while I had to wait basically over a year to get these bikes, you are getting full benefit of all those latest SRAM technologies. I've ridden this bike all over in the past few months. Did a ton of back-to-back testing against the Epic World Cup. Another stone came off other 120mm trail bikes, and I've ridden it against the Scott Spark as well, which is previously my benchmark bike, and obviously it's not as glued down as and hench something like an SB120 or a Santa Cruz Tallboy, but then it's 2 kilos lighter. And in terms of being an extremely raceable bike, but it's still super enjoyable on tech and intrinsically tough with its construction. And this ZFS 5 is probably my benchmark bike right now. And the fact you're not even having to pay roadie notes to get one is even more impressive. Whew. So there you go. There's a super fast live ride review summary, complete with a couple of ironically traction and control underlining slip-ups that hopefully illustrates just how well this new Cervelo ZFS 5 rides. And if you were expecting some kind of roadie mountain bike apology that was, you know, just rode like it had a stick up its arse, or, you know, it was just going to be a blur with a different paint job, this is not either of those. Well, this is very much an extremely efficient, in terms of race and climbing speed, yet totally engaging, enjoyable, and kind of riot-inciting ride on more technical trail stuff. And, you know, like I say, I've had this bike for a few months now. I've had zero issues with it from a practical point of view, and I'm definitely going to keep on riding it for as long as possible. So expect to see a lot more kit reviews being done on this bike. And obviously, if there's anything that stands out from this ride that you want to know more about, I mean, I've done the forks and shocks separate, I've done the T-type transmission separately, but I need to talk about those Truvative bars and that Bontrager stem, and I'll also go through the different wheels I've been testing on this bike, because I've ridden wheels from Fast Forward, from Specialized, and from Hunt, and another brand who you'll hear about next week on this bike, which is kind of why I've had to wait until just, you know, an average evening on the 1st of August to actually get this video done, because it's been running a lot of kit which I can't quite talk about yet. But what I can talk about is to say massive thanks to Cervelo for inviting me out to that initial launch last March out in Firenze. One of only 2 European journalists to get on that one, so that was a big honour and a really great way to get behind the scenes on the bike and meet those guys. So there's a live ride review on that bike and on that original ZFS 5 100 and the Cervelo ZHT hardtail, and a designer interview with Brian Bernard from their marketing, and Scotty Ray, who did most of the design work on this bike, in that segment. And then you've got this live ride review here, which brings you bang up to date. And then, like I say, I'll be topping up content on this bike as it goes on, because frankly, it's my favourite bike to ride at the moment. Just for, you know, fast laps after work, or just big epics whenever you get the chance. This is just so sorted, and being able to change the character, you know, with changing the shock length is, you know, it's obviously not something that's unique to this bike, but it's definitely nice to have in terms of boosting its overall value, which is pretty good anyway once you count those warranties in place. But also, massive thanks to Giro Cycling
UK as normal for channel sponsorship, to Peaty's, to enduro bearings. As you've seen, I've got the bottom bracket in there, headset bearings. And massive thanks to Torq Nutrition, who've kept me topped up when I'm training and when I'm riding, and just talking my hind legs off and your ears off. You know, that's what keeps me going. Torq Nutrition, there's a Guy Torq 10 code at the moment on all their products, and they've got a summer sale on, so check that video as well. And thanks to Hebtroco and Crud XL Fenders being channel sponsors as well. And of course, my Patreon supporters, who have been, oh, it's my GoPro on the bar switching off, who a lot of them have been behind me since the very start, and their monthly pledges make a massive difference to the sustainability of the channel and how much time I can spend talking to you on a GoPro about the latest bikes. So if you really like what I'm doing in the channel, please consider setting up a monthly pledge on Patreon. It's a small amount per month, but it makes a big difference to me in the long term. And you get exclusive, extended, ad-free edits as a thank you. But for now, I've been Guy Kestevan on Guy Kest TV, talking about my new favourite high-speed have-a-go hero, the Cervelo ZFS 5.